What happens when a 67-year-old black janitor quietly listening from the hallway suddenly says, "Because I couldn't watch you fail when I knew how to fix it." At Argonne Technologies, no one expected the man with the mop to have the answer to a $500 million disaster. They laughed at him, called him just the janitor, and threatened to fire him for even daring to speak. But what unfolded in that glass-walled boardroom left an entire company speechless. Want to know why the CEO said, "Tell them to trust you"? Watch the full story to see the most unexpected turnaround you've ever heard. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. Earl Thompson, 67 years old, moved slowly down the polished corridor of Argonne Technologies headquarters, pushing his well-worn janitorial cart. The wheels squeaked on the gleaming marble floor, echoing in the cavernous lobby. He wore a faded dark blue uniform, his name stitched above the heart in curling white thread. The early morning hush was thick with anticipation for the coming board meeting, but for Earl, it was just another shift. He paused near the glass wall of Conference Room B. Inside, suited executives bustled around a giant table, laying out folders and digital tablets. Among them was CEO Catherine Wells, 51 years old, commanding the room with her calm, steely presence. Earl watched her for a moment. She was the kind of leader who never raised her voice, yet managed to silence entire rooms. As Earl turned away, he heard a sharp laugh from inside. Two junior VPs, Carter and Janelle, had their eyes on him. "Oh look, the janitor's eavesdropping again," Carter sneered in a stage whisper. Janelle snorted. "Maybe he'll take notes on how to do real work." Catherine didn't even glance at the exchange. She was reviewing a document on her tablet. Earl felt the heat in his chest, but he said nothing. He continued on, scrubbing a stubborn coffee stain off the lobby floor. He had a mortgage still to pay, a grown daughter with college debt he was trying to help cover. He couldn't afford to lose this job, not now. Meanwhile, inside the conference room, Catherine was laying out the company's worst crisis in a decade. A critical software platform used by half the Fortune 500 was catastrophically unstable. Clients were threatening to sue. Investors were bailing. Loss projections were topping $500 million. Tension crackled as the head of engineering insisted they needed a year to rebuild. The CFO argued they couldn't survive that long. Carter chimed in, blaming an underqualified, offshore team for botching the original codebase. Janelle insisted on firing half the engineers to send a message. Catherine raised a hand for silence. "I want solutions, not scapegoats," she said icily. "We're out of time." Outside, Earl finished mopping. He wasn't supposed to listen, but he had heard enough to understand the root of their technical problem, lines of code he had seen in the trash months ago. He had always loved software. Before he cleaned floors, he fixed computers for neighbors. He had built his daughter's first website. He even audited free online courses. But none of that made him qualified in their eyes. And he knew it. As the meeting adjourned, Carter strutted out, glancing at Earl like he was invisible. Catherine remained behind, rubbing her temple. She didn't see Earl watching her with quiet understanding. He knew what the code's flaw was. It was absurdly simple. Embarrassingly simple. He could fix it in minutes if they'd let him. But no one would ask a janitor. When Earl clocked out, the security guard, Marcus, gave him a friendly nod. "Long day, Earl." "Same as always," Earl said, smiling faintly. He left the building slowly, carrying with him the burden of what he knew and the certainty that no one would listen. That night, he sat at his old laptop, pulling up snippets of code he had copied from printed drafts thrown in the recycling. He wasn't supposed to have them. He shouldn't have even looked. But the error was glaring. He shook his head, amazed they hadn't seen it. As he typed, he thought about saying something. About emailing the CEO. About dropping an anonymous tip. But he was just the janitor. And in this company, that title meant he was nothing. The next morning he returned with his cart. He planned to say nothing. Just mop. Just sweep. Just survive. But something was about to change. And Earl Thompson would not be ignored much longer. Earl wheeled his cart down the second-floor hallway, head low. The morning hum of voices buzzed like an angry hive. Employees gathered in clumps, trading rumors about clients dropping contracts. The usually serene office had an edge today, phones ringing with urgent tones, hushed arguments behind closed doors. He heard one manager hiss, "We're going to lose the whole damn Fortune 500 account." Another barked at her assistant to fix the coffee machine at least, so we can die caffeinated. Earl kept moving. He paused to wipe a handprint from the glass wall of the executive conference room. He wasn't allowed in there. That space was reserved for people with polished shoes and polished resumes. But today the blinds were up, offering him a clear view. Inside, the big guns were gathering again. Catherine Wells sat at the head of the table in an immaculate charcoal suit. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, but she looked tired, like she'd slept in the office. The CTO, Dr. William Keating, tapped at his tablet with the impatience of someone who didn't want to be there. Carter and Janelle, flanking him, radiated smugness that made Earl's teeth grind. Catherine started the meeting. Her voice was calm, but every word was sharp enough to cut glass. "We lost Apex Industries last night. Their legal team wants to sue for breach of contract." A collective groan rolled through the room. Catherine let it hang before continuing. "We have until Friday to convince the board we have a plan to fix this platform. Or they'll replace us. All of us." Keating slammed his tablet on the table. "It's the code architecture. It's rotten. The only fix is a complete rebuild." Carter jumped in. "That's absurd. We can't admit that to the board. We'll be toast. Besides, we outsourced the messy part. Tell them it's not our fault." Janelle smirked. "We need to start layoffs immediately. Look tough for Wall Street. Investors love that." Catherine listened, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Then she said, "We need a real plan. Not PR spin." Outside, Earl shook his head. He knew exactly what they were missing. The flaw wasn't in the whole system, just one module. One design pattern error was replicated in multiple spots. He had mapped it out at home last night, marveling at how no one with a computer science degree had noticed. He felt his heart pounding. He could fix it in an hour. Maybe less. He pressed the rag harder against the glass, listening. Inside, the shouting started. Keating called Carter incompetent. Carter called Keating a coward. Janelle took potshots at both, blaming bloated engineers who refused to work overtime. Catherine snapped. "Enough. Get out. All of you." The room fell silent. No one moved. "I said get out." Slowly, the lieutenants filed out, eyes down. Catherine slumped back in her chair and pinched the bridge of her nose. She looked up, startled to see Earl watching. Their eyes locked for a split second. She glanced away. He averted his gaze immediately. He turned and began pushing his cart down the hall, heart thudding in his chest. Downstairs, he tried to focus on polishing the chrome rails. Marcus, the security guard, approached him. "You hear all that yelling?" Marcus asked quietly. Earl sighed. "Couldn't avoid it. The place is falling apart." "Shame. You've been here longer than most of them." Earl nodded, not replying. Marcus lowered his voice. "You know, I always figured you were smarter than you let on. You're not just a mop jockey." Earl chuckled humorlessly. "Doesn't matter what I know, Marcus. Not to them." Marcus studied him. "What if you're the only one who can help?" Earl's smile faded. He looked away. "I'd lose this job if I so much as suggested I know their business," he said. But the idea had already lodged in his brain like a splinter. That night, he sat at his laptop again. He typed out a sample patch. He watched the error logs clear. He ran simulations. All green. He printed out his notes and held the stack in his trembling hands. He could fix it. If they'd just listen. But in the morning, he put the papers at the bottom of his cart, beneath the bleach and rags. He wore his uniform, punched his time card, and started mopping the floors like any other day. But the meeting wasn't done boiling over. And soon, Catherine Wells was going to notice the janitor she'd never seen before. Earl arrived early, like always. He liked the quiet before the suits filled the hallways with their urgency. He made sure the floors gleamed and the trash bins were empty. He prided himself on a job done right, even if no one noticed. But today, the tension was thicker than bleach fumes. Employees huddled in corners, whispering. IT staff had somber faces as they carried laptops back and forth. There was talk of lost accounts, lawsuits, and investors threatening revolt. Earl wiped sweat from his brow as he heard a raised voice in the main hallway. Carter was there, waving a sheaf of papers, red-faced. "This is a goddamn joke," Carter bellowed. Janelle was beside him, rolling her eyes. "Lower your voice." "I'm not lowering anything. Did you see this? Someone thinks they're a coder. They left a solution in my mailbox." Earl froze behind his cart. He watched Carter shake the stapled printout, his printout. He hadn't meant to leave it in Carter's mailbox. He'd been mopping outside the VP suites last night. He must have accidentally mixed it in with the mail tray when his manager barked at him to hurry up. Janelle snatched the pages. She squinted at them, her lips curling. What is this even supposed to be? A Band-Aid fix? This is trash. It's amateur hour. And you know what? I'm betting it was one of those outsourced clowns trying to save their ass. Earl felt a sick churn in his stomach. He took a slow step backward, trying to edge away unseen. Then Catherine's voice rang out. "What's going on here?" She strode over, her gaze flicking from Carter's fury to Janelle's disdain. Carter thrust the pages at her. "This was in my mailbox this morning. Someone thinks they're going to fix our platform with this joke." Catherine scanned it. Earl could see her eyes narrowing, not dismissing it immediately. He felt a flicker of hope. But Janelle scoffed. "We should be tracking who's leaking code. This is an internal security breach." Carter seized on that. "Exactly. Someone stole proprietary specs to play hero. I want a full investigation. Fire whoever it is. Today." Catherine held up a hand. "Enough. We'll figure out where it came from." Her eyes fell on Earl. He flinched. "Janitor," Carter snapped, noticing too. "Hey. You've been loitering around here all night. You see anyone messing with the mail?" Earl swallowed. His mouth felt dry. I just cleaned," he muttered. Janelle snorted. "He probably can't even read what's on that paper." Catherine silenced them with a look. But she kept her gaze on Earl. Assessing. Curious. "Thank you. That's all," she said quietly to him. He nodded and pushed his cart away as fast as he could without running. But the damage was done. By noon, word had spread through the company that there was a mole. Someone is trying to play genius with confidential data. Managers held emergency meetings. IT locked down the servers. Everyone was tense, suspicious. In the janitor's closet, Earl sat on a bucket, head in his hands. He hadn't meant to cause this. He just wanted to help. He had tried to stay invisible. Now, everyone was looking for the culprit. He heard the door creak open. It was Marcus. "You okay, Earl?" Earl shook his head. I messed up, Marcus. Marcus frowned. What did you do? I tried to show them how to fix it. I didn't want to steal anything. I thought maybe they'd see it. Marcus let out a long breath. Man. You're trying to help them, it's gonna get you fired. I know. Then why'd you do it? Earl stared at the floor. Because I couldn't watch them fail when I knew how to fix it. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. You're a good man. But they don't see you. They'll never see you unless you make them. Earl didn't reply. He knew Marcus was right. But making them see him meant risking everything. And he wasn't sure he was ready for that. Not yet. Earl mopped the lobby floor with slow, deliberate strokes. He tried to focus on the swirl of soapy water, the rhythmic scrape of the mop. But it was no use. The whole building was buzzing with rumors about the security breach, about the leaked, fake fix. People eyed each other with suspicion, even the friendly receptionist who normally offered him a polite nod. Today, she wouldn't meet his eyes at all. When he pushed his cart past the security desk, Marcus gave him a grave look. They're looking for you, Marcus said quietly. Earl's heart thudded. Who? Your supervisor. And HR. They want you upstairs. Earl swallowed hard. He felt a cold sweat prickling at his neck. I didn't steal anything, he said softly. Marcus leaned closer. I know that. But they don't care about the truth. They care about control. Earl closed his eyes for a moment, steadying his breathing. Then he straightened, pushing the mop into the bucket and setting it aside. I'd better go see what they want. Marcus nodded solemnly. Earl wiped his hands on his uniform and took the elevator to the 10th floor. He'd never even been up there except to empty the trash. The carpets were so thick they muffled footsteps. The walls were covered in framed patents and awards. It was the floor of the real employees. The ones who made the big money. When the elevator doors opened, he felt every eye turn to him. He heard a voice hiss. That's the janitor. He ignored it, shuffling toward the glass-walled HR office. Inside, his supervisor, Rick, was pacing, red-faced. Beside him sat Laura from HR, her expression carefully neutral. Earl. Sit, she said. He lowered himself onto the sleek leather chair, feeling small and clumsy. Rick didn't wait. What the hell were you thinking? Earl blinked. I don't know what you mean. Rick slapped a printed email on the table. Earl recognized the formatting immediately. It was a scan of his patch notes, complete with scribbled corrections. You dropped this in the VP's mailbox? Rick demanded. Earl swallowed. It was an accident. Laura raised an eyebrow. Accident? Earl explained haltingly about the mail tray, about how he must have mixed it in. Rick snorted. So you just happened to be carrying proprietary code? As a janitor? Earl felt the heat rise in his face. I wasn't stealing. I was trying to help. Laura interjected smoothly. Help? By accessing confidential documents without authorization. Earl's voice cracked. I found them in the trash. Rick scoffed. Bullshit. I did, Earl insisted. His hands shook. They throw out printouts all the time. I saw the mistake. Laura tilted her head. You're admitting you went through company trash to analyze code you weren't cleared to see. Earl slumped. I didn't mean harm. Rick leaned in, voice low and furious. You embarrassed us. The execs are furious. The CEO wants answers. She thinks we're a clown show now. Laura's expression softened slightly. Look, Earl. You've worked here a long time. You're reliable. But this is serious. We could fire you right now. He bit his lip. But, she continued, Ms. Wells wants to speak with you first. Earl's head snapped up. The CEO? Rick shook his head in disgust. She's wasting her time. Laura ignored him. She handed Earl a visitor's badge. She's waiting in conference room B, don't make her wait. Earl stood shakily. He felt his knees threaten to buckle. Rick couldn't resist one last jab. Don't think you're some hero, Earl. You're lucky you're not in handcuffs. Earl said nothing. He turned and left the office. The hall felt a mile long as he walked toward conference room B. His ears buzzed. His vision swam. When he reached the door, he hesitated, pressing his palm against the cool glass. He could see Catherine inside. She sat alone at the big table, a tablet in front of her, her expression unreadable. He took a deep breath. Then he knocked. She didn't look up. Come in, she said quietly. He pushed the door open. Sit, she said, without lifting her gaze from the tablet. Earl lowered himself into the chair across from her, hands clasped tight in his lap. Silence filled the room. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes were sharp. Cold. But also curious. You're the janitor, she said. He nodded. You tried to solve my company's biggest crisis. He swallowed. Yes. Why? He exhaled shakily. Because I couldn't watch you fail when I knew how to fix it. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then Catherine Wells leaned back in her chair. And she smiled, just barely. Well, she said. Let's see if you know what you're talking about. Earl sat stiffly in the conference room chair, feeling the sweat soak through the back of his uniform. The glass walls made him feel like an insect pinned for observation. Catherine Wells sat across from him, tablet resting on the table, fingers steepled beneath her chin. She didn't speak at first. She let the silence stretch until it filled every corner of the room, until Earl felt like squirming out of his skin. Finally, she tapped her tablet and turned it toward him. Explain this, she said. It was his patch notes, scanned and emailed, lines of code highlighted in red. He cleared his throat. You have an interface dependency recursion. It's not the whole system failing. It's one module calling itself through a bad chain. The load balancer can't resolve it because of the recursive pointer. It snowballs. Catherine blinked slowly. In English, she said coolly. Earl swallowed. It's like having a dozen people in a line, each asking the next person what to do, forever. No one just does the job. It chokes the server. She didn't react, just studied him. He continued, voice growing steadier. Your engineers think they have to rebuild the entire platform because they're blaming the architecture. But the architecture's fine. It's one mistake copied to different services. You can patch them. She drummed her fingers on the table. How many places? He looked at the ceiling, calculating. For major service groups. Maybe 24 spots in total. Catherine's eyes narrowed. And you're sure? Yes. She tapped her tablet. The door opened. Carter and Janelle stepped in. They froze when they saw Earl. Carter smirked. You're joking. We're listening to the janitor now. Janelle scoffed. Is this for HR's investigation? Because if he stole our code, sit, Catherine said. They sat. Grudgingly. Catherine turned to Earl. Tell them what you just told me. Earl cleared his throat, feeling their eyes on him. He repeated his explanation, slower this time, making sure he didn't stammer. When he finished, Carter barked a laugh. This is ridiculous. He doesn't even work here. Janelle shook her head. You want us to trust a floor mopper's code review? Earl's hands curled into fists on the table. Catherine raised a hand for silence. Do either of you see an error in his logic? They exchanged a glance. Carter opened his mouth, closed it. Janelle scrolled through the notes on her own tablet, frowning. It's not obviously wrong, she admitted reluctantly. Carter's face turned red. That doesn't mean it's right. He doesn't even know our system. Earl leaned forward. His voice trembled with fury. I know it better than you think. I clean your trash. I see every spec you print and toss. I've read your design proposals while I'm mopping the floor. Silence. Catherine didn't react. But Carter's lip curled in disgust. So you admit you've been spying on us? Earl held his gaze. I admit I'm the only one in this room who read your design. Janelle made a choking sound of disbelief. Catherine's voice cut through them all. Calm. Precise. Whiteboard. They turned. There was a big glass board on the wall, and markers were lined up on the tray. Catherine gestured. Prove it. Earl stood. His legs were shaking. He picked up a marker with fingers that felt too big, too clumsy. He started to draw. A diagram of their service calls. The recursive loop. The load balancer is failing. Then he drew the fix. The module with a simple breaking condition, and the patch to handle the legacy calls. It took 10 minutes. The room was dead silent except for the squeak of the marker. When he finished, he turned. Carter looked furious. Janelle was pale. Catherine stood slowly. She studied the board. Then she stepped forward and began asking questions. Hard ones. Why this fix? How does it scale? What about the secondary services? Earl answered everyone. He faltered once or twice, but he corrected himself quickly. Catherine never raised her voice. She just kept asking. Testing. Probing. When it was done, she turned to Carter and Janelle. Can you prove he's wrong? Silence. Janelle shook her head slowly. Carter glared at Earl, seething, but said nothing. Catherine nodded once. Clear the room, she said. Carter looked like he'd been slapped. Excuse me. Out, Catherine repeated, her voice like ice. Janelle tugged Carter's sleeve, and they left, shooting Earl murderous looks as they went. When the door closed, Catherine turned back to Earl. For the first time, her voice softened. Where did you learn to think like that? He swallowed. Books. Free classes online. Fixing my neighbor's computers. Watching you all work while I cleaned. She nodded slowly. Then she gestured to the chair. Sit back down, she said. He obeyed. Catherine picked up her tablet again. All right, Earl. Let's talk about what it will take to fix this company. Earl sat hunched in the conference room chair, feeling the tension seep from his bones even as new tension replaced it. He watched Catherine tap her tablet thoughtfully. Her perfectly manicured finger made tiny, deliberate motions on the screen, as if she were checking every word before she spoke. Finally, she looked up at him. Your fix. How long would it take you? Earl blinked. Me. Alone. She nodded once. He did the math in his head. If you gave me access to the repo, the staging environment, maybe 4 hours for the first patch. Full review and deploy, maybe 2 days, 3 max. Catherine didn't flinch. Working with our engineers. He hesitated. If they listen. If they don't, it'll take longer. Maybe never. Her lip twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Accurate, she murmured. She set the tablet down and folded her hands on the table. Earl, here's the situation. The board is about to fire me over this. Investors are already pulling money. Clients are ready to sue us into oblivion. I need a real fix in days, not weeks. I don't have time for corporate pride. Or for optics. Earl frowned. Optics? She sighed. Let's be clear. Half this company will have a meltdown if I put a janitor in charge of a production fix. They'll see it as a joke, an insult. I'll lose them. He shifted uncomfortably. So you're saying you don't want me to do it? She shook her head. I want you to do it. I need you to do it. But I need to figure out how to sell it. He exhaled, rubbing his face with both hands. I don't care about credit, he muttered. Just let me fix it. Catherine tilted her head. That's admirable. But if you're right, and I think you are, then this fix will save us hundreds of millions. I'm not going to let you walk out of here with nothing. He stared at her, mouth opening and closing. I'm not asking for money, he whispered. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You should. Before he could respond, the door opened without knocking. Carter barged in, Janelle right behind. Enough, Carter barked. This is ridiculous. Catherine, we have legal here, they want to know why you're in a closed meeting with an employee under investigation. Janelle's eyes were cold and glittering. We're compromising the chain of custody on internal evidence. Catherine didn't look at them. She just kept her eyes on Earl. Do you want the job? She asked calmly. He blinked. What? Do you want to be the one who fixes it? On payroll. With a real title. With authority to direct the patch. Carter sputtered. You're joking. He's not even qualified to. Catherine held up a single finger without looking at Carter. He fell silent instantly. She repeated, voice calm but forceful. Earl. I'm offering you a short-term contract. Principal Systems Consultant. Emergency Deployment Authority. It's not permanent, but it's real. Pay is 6 figures. You get full credit for the patch. He felt dizzy. That's insane, Carter hissed. Catherine finally turned to them. You want to veto it? Fine. Tell the board you rejected the only working solution. Let them fire all of us. Janelle's mouth opened and closed. Carter's face turned red, veins popping on his forehead. He's a janitor, he spat. Earl flinched at that. Catherine's voice dropped. And right now he's the smartest person in this company. Silence. Earl swallowed hard. Why me? He whispered. Catherine didn't blink. Because you're the only one who solved it. And I don't have time to care about anyone's ego. Including yours. She picked up her tablet again. Final offer. Take it now, and I'll sign off. Or walk out, and this company burns. He stared at her. He thought about the mortgage. His daughter's college debt. The years of being invisible. He thought about Carter sneering at him, calling him, just the janitor. He thought about Marcus saying they'd never see him unless he made them. Slowly, Earl nodded. I'll do it. Catherine didn't smile. But something in her eyes flickered, approval, maybe. She turned to Carter and Janelle. HR will process the contract in the next hour. He's your boss for this fix. Anyone who refuses to work with him can clean out their desk. Carter's face was a mask of fury. Janelle looked like she might cry. Earl just sat there, hands shaking, heart pounding in his ears. For the first time in decades, someone was giving him authority. And he was terrified. Catherine leaned forward. Congratulations, Mr. Thompson. Now let's save my company. Earl couldn't remember the last time he'd worn anything but his janitor uniform to work. But HR had given him a voucher for the company store, and now he stood in the men's bathroom mirror in a crisp blue button-down, new slacks, and polished black shoes. He barely recognized himself. His reflection looked older than he remembered. Deeper lines. A gray stubble he hadn't bothered to shave. Eyes that were weary but alert. He adjusted the collar one more time and tried to steady his breathing. Today, he wasn't pushing a mop. Today, He was a principal systems consultant, with authority over the entire emergency fix. When he walked into the engineering bullpen, the noise stopped. The team leads, a cluster of young men and women in hoodies and jeans, swiveled to look at him. Some blinked. A couple openly snickered. He saw Carter standing in the corner, arms folded, glaring like he wanted to punch something. Janelle was there too, pale and tight-lipped. Earl cleared his throat. "My name is Earl Thompson," he said, voice cracking at first, but he forced himself to keep going. "I'm in charge of the patch for this platform." Murmurs spread instantly. One engineer, a pale, bearded kid with a nose ring, raised his hand sarcastically. "Yeah, didn't you used to mop the floor?" Laughter rippled. Earl held his gaze steady. "I still know how to mop," he said evenly. "But today you're going to help me fix the code you couldn't." Silence. Someone snorted. Earl turned and began scrawling on the whiteboard. He drew the recursive loop pattern. The call stack overflowed. The bad dependency. Then he drew the patch. Fast. Confident. Precise. As he worked, the laughter died. By the time he turned back, no one was snickering. He scanned their faces. Who here sees an error in that fix? Silence. He pointed at the bearded kid. "You. Name?" "Ryan," the kid mumbled. "You're the lead for the billing module, right?" Ryan nodded. "Your service has 3 instances of this loop. You're going to rewrite the handler exactly like this. Today." Ryan's mouth opened. "Any questions?" Earl snapped. Ryan hesitated. Then shook his head. Earl turned to a thin Indian woman on the left. "Name?" "Priya. Your team handles authentication. Same pattern. 2 fixes. You'll lead it." Priya straightened. "Understood." He kept going, naming leads, assigning tasks, and sketching out deployment schedules. His voice got stronger with each command. He felt Carter's eyes boring into him the entire time. Finally, Earl set down the marker and faced them all. "This is how it's going to work. No one gets to sabotage this fix. No one gets to stall. You want to argue? Do it now." Silence. He let it hang for a beat. "Good," he said. He turned to leave. Carter's voice lashed out. "This is a circus. You think the board will let you keep playing CIO? You're humiliating yourself. And us." Earl stopped. He turned slowly. "Carter," he said quietly. "You're going to sit at that table and write tests like everyone else. Or you're going to leave. Right now." Carter's face twisted. "You can't talk to me like that. Watch me." For a second, it looked like Carter would explode. But he glanced at the hallway where Catherine Wells was standing, arms folded, watching everything. Carter's shoulders slumped. He sat down. Earl turned to Catherine. She nodded once. Approval. She didn't say a word. He left the room to the sound of keyboards clacking reluctantly to life. Outside, he leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His heart thundered in his chest. Marcus, the security guard, was there. "Damn," Marcus whispered. "You did it." Earl wiped sweat from his forehead. "For now," he muttered. Marcus grinned. "The whole company's talking about you. They're saying you embarrassed Carter so bad he might quit." Earl shook his head. "I don't want him to quit. I want him to work. We don't have time for pride." Marcus studied him for a moment. "You know, they're never going to forget this. One way or another." Earl sighed. "I'm counting on it." He pushed away from the wall and walked toward the server room, shoulders square, mind already racing through test scripts and deployment plans. Today, he wasn't the janitor. Today, he was in charge. The hours blurred together in a haze of code reviews, design meetings, and deployment checklists. Earl had set up shop in a cramped glass-walled war room on the 6th floor, commandeering every whiteboard and laptop in sight. The engineering team cycled in and out, showing their updates, fielding his blunt questions, leaving looking rattled but determined. By mid-morning, Earl was leaning over Priya's laptop, pointing at a chunk of code. See that condition? It's failing to exit recursion if the parameter is null. That's the loop. Priya adjusted her glasses, cheeks flushed. I see it now. God, how did we miss that? Because you all assumed the architecture was wrong, not the pattern. Don't beat yourself up. Just fix it. She nodded and began typing furiously. Outside the war room, tension was building like thunderheads. Carter and Janelle paced the hall, whispering furiously. Several other senior engineers watched with poorly concealed hostility. They hated that they had to take orders from the janitor. But Catherine Wells had made it crystal clear, anyone who refused to work with Earl was gone. When Carter finally entered the room around noon, Earl didn't even look up. Pull up your billing test suite, Earl said without greeting. Carter slammed his laptop onto the table. You're enjoying this, aren't you? He hissed. Earl looked him dead in the eye. No, Carter sneered. Really? The great janitor genius finally gets to show us how stupid we all are. Earl kept his voice level. Carter, I don't have time for your ego. I don't want to humiliate you. I want to fix this before everyone here loses their job. Carter's eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us? Earl let the silence stretch. Then he shook his head. No. I just think I see it differently. He reached over and scrolled through Carter's code. Right here, he said, tapping the screen. That's the faulty call. It's creating an infinite loop because you're not checking the fallback path. Carter scowled but didn't argue. Earl kept talking, voice calm but relentless. Patch it. Then rerun the tests. You'll see green. Carter's fingers hovered over the keys. For a moment, he looked like he might refuse. But then, with a grunt of defeat, he began typing. Janelle was next. She tried to protest when Earl called on her. I don't report to you, she snapped. Today you do, Earl replied evenly. Her eyes flashed. You think you can boss us around because Catherine likes your sob story? He felt his face flush, but he didn't rise to the bait. I'm not telling you to like me. I'm telling you to fix the code. She glared at him. Do you even know what it's like to work for a company like this? Do you know what it takes to survive here? He stared at her, voice dropping. Cleaning your trash every night. Yeah. I know. That shut her up. By late afternoon, the team was running a first integration test on the staging server. Earl sat with Catherine in the corner of the room, watching lines of logs scroll by on a giant monitor. She spoke without looking at him. You've got them moving. Even Carter. He let out a low laugh. For now. She glanced at him. You think it'll hold? He shrugged. They're good engineers. Their pride's hurt. But they don't want to lose their jobs. Catherine nodded slowly. She tapped her tablet and showed him an email. Board meeting. Tomorrow morning. Investors dialing in. They want to know if we can promise a fix, she said. Earl felt his stomach twist. You can't promise it yet, he said carefully. Her eyebrow arched. Honest. He nodded. We're close. But I won't guarantee anything until I see green on every module. Catherine studied him for a long moment. You know you're making me look bad, right? He blinked. She cracked the tiniest smile. Good. Earl laughed. It felt strange. He hadn't laughed at work in years. But the moment was interrupted when Ryan burst in. Earl, we hit a wall. The auth module is still failing the rollback. It's throwing a fatal exception on legacy calls. Earl jumped up. Show me. They crowded around Ryan's screen. Logs scrolled with red error messages. Earl scanned them. No reference on a fallback route. It's calling the deprecated handler. Priya groaned. We thought we killed that path. Earl shook his head. You killed most of them. Not all. We need to trace every single service that references it. Ryan looked panicked. That'll take hours. Earl's voice hardened. Then start now. He turned to Priya. Split your team. Half trace the handlers. Half patch the conditionals. She hesitated, then nodded. Earl grabbed the marker and began scribbling a dependency graph on the whiteboard. They all watched in silence as he drew. No one laughed this time. Catherine watched too. And for the first time, Earl saw something like real respect in her eyes. He capped the marker and turned back to the room. This is our breakpoint, he said, voice grim. We nail this tonight, or the company's dead tomorrow. Silence. Then, slowly, Ryan nodded. Let's do it. One by one, the others followed. Earl exhaled. They were listening. The fluorescent lights of the sixth-floor war room buzzed overhead, casting harsh white shadows over tired faces and empty coffee cups. It was nearly midnight. Earl stood at the whiteboard with a marker in his calloused fingers, lines of dependency graphs and flowcharts layered on top of each other like a palimpsest of frantic corrections. The room smelled of stale takeout and human stress. Priya was hunched over her laptop on one end of the table, murmuring code to herself like a prayer. Ryan was on a video call with his offshore teammate, voice raw from hours of arguing about legacy routes. Carter sat grim-faced in a rolling chair, typing test scripts with short, angry keystrokes. Even Janelle had given up pretending she wasn't part of the team, her sharp eyes scanning logs as they compiled. Earl watched them, his chest tight with a strange mixture of pride and terror. Status, he asked, voice cracking slightly. Ryan didn't look up. Auth modules nearly clean. We traced 3 more deprecated handlers and killed them. The last one is being a bastard, it's nested in an undocumented microservice. Earl rubbed his forehead. Make it visible. Force it to log every call. I don't care if it floods the console. We'll find it. Ryan nodded tiredly and got back to work. Priya raised a hand weakly. Billing is clean. Passing all tests. Earl felt a surge of relief. He reached out and squeezed her shoulder gently. Nice work. She smiled. Carter cleared his throat. The inventory module is green except for the rollback on transaction failures. I'm writing a new condition to abort the stack if it hits null. Earl gave him a long, considering look. Good, he said simply. Carter's jaw worked like he wanted to say something snide. But he didn't. He just went back to typing. Earl turned back to the whiteboard and began erasing sections that were done. Every clean module felt like a weight dropping off his shoulders. But there were still too many scribbles left. Too many lines that ended in angry red circles. He heard a knock on the glass wall. Catherine Wells stood outside, watching. He waved her in with the marker. She didn't hesitate. She walked in slowly, looking around the room. Her eyes took in the mess of diagrams, the exhausted engineers, the blinking servers stacked against the back wall. How's it going? She asked quietly. No one answered at first. Finally, Earl exhaled. We're getting there. Billing is good. Inventory is nearly there. Auth is the last nightmare. She nodded. I've got the board meeting in 8 hours, she said. Earl felt a fresh stab of fear in his chest. I won't lie to you, he said. We're not promising green lights until we have them. I'm not feeding you bullshit. Catherine's mouth curved into a humorless smile. That's why I'm here. I want the truth. Not a sales pitch. Earl nodded. He pointed at the whiteboard. This is the truth. We're close. But one missed handler, one unpatched recursion, and it'll blow up again in production. She studied it carefully. Do you need anything? She asked. Earl blinked. He glanced at the team. Food, Priya mumbled. Real food. Ryan raised a hand without looking up. Coffee that doesn't taste like mop water. Carter snorted at that. Catherine nodded slowly. Done. I'll get catering up here. She met Earl's eyes. Anything else? He hesitated. Tell the board to wait, he said quietly. Tell them to trust you. She watched him carefully. And then, to everyone's shock, she laughed, a short, dry, exhausted sound. You think they trust me? She asked. Earl held her gaze. I think they should. Catherine didn't answer for a long time. Finally, she turned and walked out, already tapping her phone. The room went silent again. Carter broke it by muttering, You know she's only listening to you because she's desperate, right? Earl turned slowly. Doesn't matter, he said. Carter frowned. Earl kept going. We're here because we're the only ones who can fix this. You want to argue with me about your title? Or do you want to deploy clean code? Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't answer. He just kept typing. By 2 a.m., the catering arrived. Sandwiches, fruit, energy drinks. Marcus, the security guard, helped haul it in. Marcus clapped Earl on the shoulder. Never seen the C-suite pay for night shift catering, he said. Earl managed a tired smile. They're not doing it for me, he said. Marcus leaned in. Yeah. They are. Earl watched the engineers eat, their energy returning bit by bit. He forced himself to choke down a sandwich even though his stomach felt knotted. At 3 a.m., Ryan whooped. Auth is clean. All tests passing. The whole room burst into ragged, exhausted cheers. Earl felt something loosen in his chest. He wiped sweat from his brow. Deploy to staging, he ordered hoarsely. Run the integration suite. Everything. By 4 a.m., the dashboard was glowing green. Every service. Every module. The room fell silent as they watched the final log scroll. Earl let out a shaking breath. Push the patch notes to the repo. Lock it. No changes without my sign-off. Priya saluted tiredly. Ryan slumped over the table. Carter stood up and looked at Earl for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Earl stared at it. Slowly, he took it. Carter's grip was firm. No one's gonna believe this tomorrow, Carter muttered. Earl shook his head. Don't care, he said softly. He looked around the room. You all did this. Remember that. They sat in stunned silence. Outside, the first light of dawn was creeping through the glass walls. The sun was rising over the city skyline in pale stripes of orange and pink, casting a cold glare across the 20th floor boardroom of Argonne Technologies. The giant mahogany table gleamed under recessed lights, lined with water carafes and tablets. The board of directors was dialed in on the giant wall monitor, their faces filling small squares like a jury. Catherine Wells sat at the head of the table, hair pulled back in a tight, no-nonsense bun. She had changed into a crisp black suit, looking as controlled as ever, but the purple under her eyes betrayed the sleepless night. To her right sat Carter, looking freshly shaved and scrubbed, wearing a bland corporate expression that didn't fool anyone. Janelle was beside him, pale and alert, eyes flicking nervously between the monitor and the door. Priya and Ryan were there too, their shoulders slumped with fatigue but their backs straight with defiant pride. And there was Earl. He had refused a tie, settling for the same new button-down shirt from yesterday. His name badge still read, Facilities, but his posture was different. Upright. Solid. Eyes steady. The board members didn't hide their confusion when he sat at the table. One older man in a gray suit squinted at the camera. "Catherine," he said, voice tinny through the speaker, "who is that?" She didn't flinch. "This is Earl Thompson," she said. "Principal systems consultant for this emergency deployment." A few board members exchanged skeptical looks. "Consultant? I don't see his name on any HR records." "He was promoted yesterday," Catherine said evenly. A thin-lipped woman in a red blazer raised an eyebrow. "From where?" Catherine's eyes flicked once toward Earl. "Facilities," she said. Dead silence. One board member cleared his throat, trying to hide his incredulous laugh. "You're telling us the janitor is your new systems consultant?" Carter winced, eyes darting to Earl. Janelle stared at the table. Earl didn't move. Catherine's voice didn't waver. "Yes." The man in the gray suit leaned forward. "Catherine. Investors are on this call. The press is already smelling blood. We lost Apex Industries, and half our Fortune 500 contracts are on the verge of legal action. This is not the time for charity cases." Earl felt heat rush up his neck. Catherine didn't look at the monitor. She turned instead to Earl. "Mr. Thompson. Tell them what you found." Earl's mouth was dry. He glanced at the screen of faces. Some were openly smirking. Others just looked bored. He cleared his throat. "The problem wasn't the entire platform," he began. His voice cracked, but he forced it steady. "It was a single recursive dependency error repeated in multiple services. No one noticed because they blamed the architecture. It wasn't architecture. It was copy-pasted bad code." Silence. He felt his heart pounding like a drum. He kept going. "I traced it to 24 instances. We patched all of them last night. Integration tests are green. Staging is clean. We're ready to deploy." He tapped the tablet in front of him. "The entire fix cost you one night of work. Instead of a $500 million rebuild." The board members blinked. The woman in red cleared her throat. "You expect us to believe that our CTO and engineering department missed something a janitor spotted?" Earl looked at her squarely. "Yes," he said. She bristled. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" He let out a low breath. "Because no one would have listened." That silenced them again. Catherine folded her hands. "You have the logs," she said calmly. "The patches. The test results. You can have your CTO verify them if you want. But you don't have time to shop for a new plan. This is the only plan that works." Carter swallowed hard and leaned in. "He's right," he said quietly. Janelle looked up. "It's real. We all worked on it." He was the lead. The man in the gray suit sat back. "Well," he muttered. "I'll be damned." Another board member spoke up. "What do you want from us, Ms. Wells?" Catherine didn't hesitate. "Approval to deploy. And a public statement that we have a solution. That we retained the clients. That our platform is stable." She turned her head slightly. "And a commitment to fix how we treat our people." They didn't answer immediately. But one by one, the board members began nodding. "Approved," the chair finally said. Catherine let out a slow breath. "Thank you." The call ended. The screen went black. The room was silent except for the hum of the HVAC. Carter shifted uncomfortably. "Look," he began. Earl raised a hand. "Save it." Carter shut his mouth. Janelle stood and walked around the table. She didn't say anything. Just held out her hand. Earl looked at it for a long moment. Then he shook it. Priya and Ryan clapped. Catherine finally stood. She walked to Earl and extended her hand. Mr. Thompson, she said, voice low so only he could hear. You saved us. I don't think we can ever repay you properly. He shook his head. Just pay everyone fairly, he said. Listen to them. She nodded. You have a job here. As long as you want it. He hesitated. Then smiled. I'll think about it, he said. He turned and walked to the door. No mop. No cart. Just Earl Thompson. The man who saved the company. Dear friend, every day, countless brilliant minds go unnoticed because of the uniforms they wear or the jobs they hold. Talent doesn't care about titles. Respect shouldn't depend on status. This story reminds us that everyone deserves to be heard, no matter where they stand in the company hierarchy, or in society. Let's create a world where we see potential in everyone, where no voice is silenced because of bias or arrogance. If this message resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Let's spread stories that inspire empathy, challenge injustice, and remind us of the hidden greatness all around us.